Okay, so it feels like subscriptions are just everywhere now, doesn't it?
Absolutely everywhere. Gyms, streaming, phones, even software.
Yeah, exactly. And you often get these add-ons, like maybe a fitness tracker from the gym or your phone itself bundled with the service plan.
Right.
But have you ever really thought about whether the way you pay for those extras, like in installments versus all at once, might actually sort of nudge how loyal you feel to the main service?
It's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
This subtle link between how we handle the money side of things and our emotional connection or lack thereof to a provider.
Hmm.
It often operates just under the radar.
Totally. And that's exactly what we're going to dig into today. We're looking at some really interesting research on how breaking down the cost of an add-on into multiple payments can influence whether you stick around with the main service.
And for this deep dive, we're leaning heavily on a 2019 article from the Journal of Marketing Research. It's titled The Commitment Projection Effect, When Multiple Payments for a Product Affect Defection from a Service.
Oh.
And the authors are Irit Nitzan and Danit Ein-Gar, both from the College School of Management at Tel Aviv University.
Great. So our mission here is really to unpack what they found, to understand these kind of surprising ways that paying for the extras impacts our commitment to the main gig, right?
Exactly. Understanding that projection mechanism they talk about.
Okay, so let's get into it. What was the first, maybe kind of counterintuitive thing that Nitzan and Ein-Gar discovered?
Well, the core finding right off the bat is that in the early stages, right after you buy that add-on,
Yeah.
customers paying in installments are actually less likely to think about leaving the main service, less likely than people who paid for the same add-on up front in one lump sum.
Huh. See, my first instinct would be the opposite. Like, more payments ongoing feels like a bigger tie, a bigger commitment. Why would installments make you less likely to leave early on?
It does seem counterintuitive, doesn't it? You'd think dropping a big chunk of cash up front would anchor you more. But their research suggests these multiple smaller payments create a different kind of psychological effect initially. It's almost like each payment is a small reaffirmation, keeping you engaged in those early days.
Okay, interesting. So installments give this initial loyalty boost for the main service, even though it's the add-on you're paying off.
Precisely. But that initial boost, well, it's not the whole story.
Ah, okay, here comes the twist. This is where that commitment projection idea comes in, right? Tell us about that.
Yes, this is the heart of Nitzan and Ein-Gar's theory. They argue that when you're paying off that add-on over time, especially if it feels bundled with the main service.
Like the phone from the mobile company.
Exactly. Your feelings about your commitment to the product itself, the phone, the smartwatch, whatever it is, start to influence how you feel about the service provider.
So my feelings about paying for the gadget sort of spill over onto the phone company or the gym.
That's a good way to put it. Spill over or get projected onto them.
Yeah.
The researchers suggest that as you make payment after payment, your initial excitement about using the product might fade a bit. Or maybe your sense of obligation to keep using it because you're still paying diminishes.
The novelty wears off.
Right. They mentioned this idea of duration alignment expectancy. You sort of expect your usage to match the payment period, and when it doesn't,
Yeah.
that creates a little dissonance. And also, the pain of paying changes. That big upfront payment feels significant, but small monthly payments become less noticeable, less painful over time. The perceived investment feels smaller.
So the monthly payment just becomes another line item, not a constant reminder of this cool thing you bought.
Exactly. And that weaker feeling about the product, maybe you're not using it as much. Maybe the ongoing payment feels less justified. That feeling gets projected onto the service provider.
Wow.
You start associating those slightly less positive feelings with the main service, making you maybe a bit more open to checking out competitors as time goes on.
So wait, the more payments I make for the add-on, the more likely I might be to consider leaving the main service provider. That's fascinating.
It's a really subtle effect. And importantly, they found that while the intention to leave the service does creep up over time for the installment folks, it generally doesn't actually get higher than the intention to leave for those who paid up front. It's more that the initial gap closes. The early loyalty advantage of the installment plan fades.
Okay, got it. So the installment plan doesn't eventually make you more disloyal than paying up front. It just loses its initial retention power over the payment period. That makes sense.
Precisely.
Now, you mentioned some real-world data earlier from the mobile phone industry back in the day. How did that fit in?
Yeah, Nitzan and Ein-Gar looked at some really interesting data from a cellular provider in the late 1990s. They had two big groups of customers who got their phones differently.
Okay, what were the differences?
So cohort A, they got their phones on a 24-month installment plan, and crucially, they had no termination fee if they left the service early.
Okay.
Cohort B came in a bit later. They got their phones on a longer 36-month plan, and they faced a $200 early termination fee.
Right, so different payment lengths, different exit barriers. What happened with customer churn?
Well, here's the striking part. In both groups, the rate at which people left the service actually went up while they were still paying off the phone.
Increased, even with the termination fee for cohort B.
Yes. And then, almost like clockwork, the defection rate started to decrease right after they finished making their phone payments.
Wow. So the end of the payment plan was the turning point, regardless of the 24 versus 36 months or the fee.
It really seemed to be. The end of the handset payments, 24 months for A, 36 for B, was the point where things shifted. This provided some strong real-world hints supporting this whole idea.
That's really compelling, but they didn't stop there, right? They ran specific experiments to nail down this commitment projection thing.
Oh yeah, they conducted a whole series, 7 studies in total, to really dissect the mechanism.
What did some of those show?
Well, study 1, for instance, looked at mobile customers again. They found that the tendency for defection intentions to rise with more payments held true, even when they controlled for how satisfied people were with the actual mobile service.
So it wasn't just about people being unhappy with their phone signal or customer service?
Exactly. Something else was going on. Study 2 used a hypothetical scenario. Imagine buying a phone with installments versus one payment. Only the installment group showed increasing intentions to leave the service over the imagined payment period.
Okay, so isolating the payment method itself, what about feeling stuck because the product only works with that service?
Good question. They tackled that in study 3 with a coffee service scenario. People got a coffee machine, some via installments, some up front. But the key was the machine worked with capsules from other coffee providers too.
Ah, so no tech lock-in.
Right. And they still saw defection intentions rise over time for the installment group. It wasn't just about being trapped by the hardware.
Okay. Did they try to actually measure this commitment shifting?
Yes. Study 4 did exactly that. As people imagined making more payments for the coffee machine, their stated commitment to the coffee service went down. And that drop in service commitment predicted a higher likelihood of switching.
And the upfront payment group?
Interestingly, their commitment to the service actually increased slightly over the same period.
Wow, okay, that's pretty direct support for the projection idea. You mentioned one where they manipulated commitment.
Yeah, study 5 was clever. They had people imagine getting a smartwatch from a fitness center. Then they told some to imagine their commitment to the watch decreasing over time.
Mm-hmm.
Those people then reported a higher likelihood of wanting to leave the fitness center. But if they were told to imagine their commitment to the watch increasing, that rise in defection intention didn't happen.
That really isolates the feeling about the product, driving the feeling about the service.
Okay, and what about the bundling aspect? How important is it that you get the product from the service provider? Absolutely crucial, it seems. Study 6 looked at a home security system. Some people imagined buying it from the security service provider. Others imagined buying the same system separately, like online.
Okay.
The increase in defection intentions over time with installment payments only happened when the system was bought from the provider when it felt like a bundle. Buying it separately didn't produce the same effect.
That makes total sense. If it's separate, why connect the payments to the service, right?
Exactly. And one last key piece, the end date. Study 7 compared installment plans for a coffee machine. One was like a lease with a fixed number of payments and an end date. The other was like renting open-ended payment.
And the result?
The rising defection intention over time only showed up for the plan with a defined end date. The open-ended renting scenario didn't trigger it. Knowing the payments will eventually stop seems key to this whole projection effect.
Fascinating. So pulling it all together, what are the absolute must-haves for this commitment projection effect to kick in based on all these studies?
Nitzan and Ein-Gar boiled it down to 3 essential conditions. First, obviously, the extra product has to be paid for in multiple installments.
Right.
Second, customers need to see the product and the service as being kind of bundled together, or at least closely linked.
Mm-hmm.
And third, that payment plan for the product needs to have a clear, defined end date, not just ongoing payments forever.
Okay. Installments, perceived bundle, defined end date. Got it. This seems like a really significant finding, both for understanding customer psychology and for how businesses operate. What's the big contribution here?
Well, theoretically, it adds a lot to how we think about payment structures influencing loyalty beyond just the thing being paid for. It highlights this slightly counterintuitive dynamic where loyalty towards a service can actually weaken over time because of how you're paying for an associated product. That challenges some simpler models of loyalty.
Yeah, the idea that loyalty just steadily increases isn't always true here.
Exactly. And it adds nuance to bundling. It's not just about the initial offer, but the payment dynamics of the bundle components matter long term.
And what about for managers? What should businesses take away from this?
Well, a few things. Offering installments for add-ons. It looks like a pretty good tool for getting customers in the door and keeping them, at least initially.
Okay.
The length of that plan matters too. A longer plan might extend that initial sticky period. But crucially, having that clear end date seems necessary for the long-term commitment dynamics they describe.
Right.
And finally, businesses should probably work on reinforcing that feeling that the add-on product really is part of and enhances their main service. That perceived link is key for the initial benefit.
So it's a useful tool, but maybe a double-edged sword. Great for initial retention, but you need to be mindful that the effect can wear off or even slightly reverse as payments progress.
That seems to be the gist of it. It requires a sophisticated approach, maybe thinking about engagement strategies differently as customers move through that payment cycle for the add-on.
This has been really eye-opening. Just amazing how something like an installment plan for one product can ripple out and affect your feelings about a whole separate service, all driven by this commitment projection.
It really highlights the complex psychology behind seemingly simple consumer decisions, doesn't it? How our relationship with the tangible thing and how we pay for it gets tangled up with our view of an intangible service.
It definitely makes you think, like, have you personally ever noticed this? Maybe with a phone plan or a gym membership where you bought some gear. Did how you felt about paying off that gear subtly change how you felt about the main service over time? Maybe without even realizing it then.
It's a great question to reflect on, and certainly gives businesses something to consider about the long-term effects of their pricing and bundling strategies.
Absolutely. And for anyone wanting to explore related ideas, you could look into things like the psychology of sunk costs, how we perceive value in bundles, or, broader strategies companies use for long-term customer loyalty beyond just payment plans. Really fascinating stuff. Thanks for walking us through this.
My pleasure. It's complex, but very insightful research.